Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon. This hearing is called to order. This is the public hearing for the City Council Committee on Transportation and Public Utilities. The purpose of the public hearing is to hear testimony on Bill number 161058 and Resolution number 160798. I'm Councilmember Mark Squilla. I will be chairing today's hearing in the absence of our chairman, Councilman Johnson. I recognize that the presence of a quorum and committee members. To my left is Councilman Tottenberger, Councilman Jones. To my right, Councilman Bass and Councilman O. Just one procedural note before we get underway. After all the testimony on Bill number 161058, we will be recessed into a public meeting for the purpose of taking action on that bill. At the completion of our public meeting, we will go back into a public hearing for testimony on Resolution 160798. And with that, we'll like the clerk to please read the title of the bill.
Bill number 161058, adopting an amendment to the Articles of Incorporation of the Philadelphia Energy Authority, increasing the number of members on the authority's board from 5 to 7 as proposed by the board in a resolution adopted November 30th, 2016.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the witnesses for this bill?
Christopher Lewis and Christine Knapp.
Thank you. In no particular order, please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimonies.
My name is Christopher Lewis. I'm the chair of the Philadelphia Energy Authority. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Good afternoon.
And committee. Mr. Chairman, I am here today to testify in support of Bill number 161058. This bill would increase the size of the Board of Directors of the Energy Authority from its current 5 to a total of 7 directors. I have provided to the committee a written statement in support of the bill, and rather than take too much of your time today, I would submit that written statement as my testimony of record. I am happy to answer any questions you might have. And if you have questions relating to the work of the authority, I've also brought with me today our executive director and the vice chair of the authority, Emily Shapiro. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions? Councilman Tottenberger.
Question on the authority that the board has. I mean, tell me just a little bit about the scope of the board. Like, what do you... Tell me what you do.
So the Philadelphia Energy Authority is an authority that was created under the Municipal Authorities Act.
Gotcha.
We have broad powers to help the city reduce its energy consumption and save on its energy expenses, and to help the residents of the city. Principally, we're doing that via the Philadelphia Energy Campaign. The Energy Campaign is an effort targeted at 4 sectors: municipal buildings, the school district, low-income and moderate-income residential, and small businesses. And the purpose of the Energy Campaign is to target those sectors, implement energy savings measures, create jobs, and reduce the carbon footprint of the city.
These are all great things and noble causes. One last question I have in regards to the board. Does the board have the ability to hire and fire staff?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. That's it. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilwoman Bass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Councilwoman.
So I just wanted to state, I was just reading over your testimony, and I just really wanted to commend you all for the work that you've done with a limited number of board members, and I think that expanding the board based on the fact that you're looking for additional expertise really makes a lot of sense. And at a time when energy is really an important topic, as we think about our future, as we think about global warming and all of the things in our carbon footprints, we need to pay attention to energy. So I just really wanted to thank you all for the work that you do, and also for acknowledging that a larger board will be helpful to the mission and to really helping all Philadelphians. So, I wish you well in finding those board members who have the level of expertise that you're looking for, even though there's plenty of folks around. So, but thank you so much.
Thank you, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Any other questions? Before I go to your next question, I'd just like, for the record, recognize Councilman Dom present. Councilman Jones?
No, I just want to echo Councilwoman Bass's comments. I don't know how we were able to coerce you into taking this job, but we're glad that you did. I will save my questions, Mr. Chairman, for budget on how much we're actually saving by way of your efforts. But I just remember when I was a freshman getting one statistic that we have 85 million in utilities that we pay roughly annually. Are we still hovering around that?
It is the city's second largest non-discretionary expense.
Right. So we need you to do what you're doing, and things like energy contracts on conservation with the PICO and others. We're counting on you to provide your expertise for and help us out. And we understand also the importance of environmental. We spend more time here than we do even at home, awake. So we appreciate what you're doing to keep us kind of seeing and breathing and warm. And so we appreciate, particularly in the complex. So I have a lot more questions. I'll save them for budget. But thank you right now for what you guys are doing.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, is there anyone else here to testify on bill number 161058? Christine, please state your name for the record.
Good afternoon. Christine Knapp. I'm the Director of the Office of Sustainability, and I'll also keep my remarks brief. I wanted to be here today to testify in support of Bill 161058 to expand the membership of the Energy Authority from 5 to 7 members. Mainly, I wanted to sort of answer Councilman Taubenberger's question indirectly by stating a little bit about the work that our office does and how we work with the Energy Authority, to give you a flavor for why expanding the board could be helpful to us. The Office of Sustainability manages Greenworks, the city's sustainability plan, which has a vision around clean and efficient energy. Our energy office within the Office of Sustainability does a variety of tasks to help meet that vision. For example, we manage the city's utility bills, we purchase the city's energy, we benchmark the city's buildings in order to save money and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and track building performance. We implement energy efficiency projects that reduce overall energy use, such as the Quadplex project, which was the 4 major downtown office buildings, including City Hall, that were retrofitted. That project now saves $1.5 million a year, approximately, in energy savings. We also use our capital funds to support smaller energy projects, swapping out LED lighting in a fleet shop, for example, to help save that department money. We also promote solar energy by improving the permitting process and reducing barriers and soft costs in partnership with the Department of Energy and others. And in order to achieve these tasks, we work in close partnership with the Energy Authority. For example, recently we released a request for information in partnership with the authority, seeking information about renewable energy projects that might work for the city to help make those projects more cost effective. We received over 20 responses to that RFI, and we're now working with the authority to review them and decide on next steps that might help us increase the amount of solar energy or other renewable energy projects in the city. We're also working with the authority on looking at an energy efficiency project at the Art Museum, which is currently the largest energy consumer of the city's buildings. And we're also exploring converting street lighting to LED lights in order to save energy and money. So just to give you, again, a scope of some of the projects that we manage, that we work in partnership with the authority on, and why we think expanding the board, expanding the expertise on the board would be helpful to us. That's why we're here in support of this bill. And I'd be happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Christine, for your testimony. Is there any questions? Seeing none, is there anyone else here to testify on Bill number 161058? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. We're now going to a public meeting to consider the action to be taken on this bill. Chair recognizes Councilmember Jones for a motion on Bill number 161058.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 161058 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at our next session of council.
Second. It has been moved and approved, properly seconded, that bill number 161058 be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Bill number 161058 will be reported from the committee with a favorable recommendation, with a request that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading at the next council session. That concludes our public meeting. We will now resume our public hearing. So we're back into the public hearing. Clerk, would you please read the title of the resolution number 160798?
Resolution number 160798, authorizing Council's Committee on Transportation and Public Utilities to hold hearings concerning the adequacy, safety, and consistency of SEPTA's CCT system, which provides paratransit services to individuals with disabilities and senior citizens.
Thank you. Clerk, please read the title of the first panel.
Cassandra West, Deborah Grober.
Before we get started with testimony, the Chair would like to recognize Councilwoman Bass for a comment on the resolution.
Thank you very much. Some time ago, I think it was back in the fall, we met with the Alliance of Social Service Providers and had a very thorough dialogue about some of the issues affecting their constituents and our communities at large. And one of the issues was around CCT and the access to it, the availability of it, and just the general feeling that for those who needed CCT the most, that there were some issues in terms of actually being able to utilize a service that was this important. And so that is where this hearing came from. The idea for this hearing actually started from. And we want to thank everyone who's here today to testify on this very important issue, and also thank SEPTA for being willing to come and to participate and to really hear what some folks have. And this is really about finding resolutions. So bringing SEPTA and the community together to talk about CCT and really what ways can we improve it? How can we help SEPTA? You know, are there things that we can do to be more helpful, and how can SEPTA help the community at large with CCT to make sure that it's an efficient operation that is really doing what it's designed to do? And so I just wanted to open up with those comments and thank everyone for coming out today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilwoman Bass. Councilman Tautenberger?
Yes, I just wanted a quick word on really thanking Councilwoman Bass for bringing this to our attention. This is, I think, a very, very important subject. I look forward to the hearings, and I thank you all for being here, and I thank Councilwoman Bass for her ability, not only her ability, but her passion to do this and bring this forward. You're welcome.
Thank you, Council Member. All right, for the record, I guess we'll just state your name for the record and then proceed one at a time with your testimony.
My name is Cassandra West.
And then just say your name and then proceed with your testimony, then we'll do each individual after your testimony.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Committee on Transportation Public Utilities. My name is Cassandra West, and I am Manager of Program Eligibility and Regulatory Compliance at the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, SEPTA. I'm here today to provide testimony on Resolution number 160798. SEPTA serves over 750,000 passengers in Philadelphia and the surrounding counties each weekday. We are the nation's 6th largest public transportation system. The Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and the ADA Amendments Act of 2008 require that public transportation be accessible to and usable by people of all abilities. SEPTA has expended significant resources to achieve this goal. SEPTA's bus fleet has been 100% ADA accessible since July 2004, and we have more than 100 accessible rail and rail transit stations, with more on the way. SEPTA is committed to building a fully accessible transit system. For individuals unable to use accessible SEPTA for some or all of their trips, SEPTA operates the CCT Connect ADA paratransit service as required by the U.S. Department of Transportation's ADA regulations. In addition, SEPTA is the provider of the state lottery-funded shared ride program for seniors residing in Philadelphia. SEPTA does not directly operate our paratransit service, but contracts with 6 service providers which employ the drivers who transport our customers. Within Philadelphia, 3 contractors, Edens Corporation, MV Transit, and First Transit, provide service to our customers. Our contracted carriers are required to train drivers, maintain vehicles, and provide rides. The current annual cost of paratransit service for both programs in the city of Philadelphia is $47.9 million. In Philadelphia, paratransit transports an average of 3,700 riders daily and approximately 103,000 passengers on a monthly basis. Federal regulations require that ADA paratransit be comparable to regular bus and light rail service with respect to service area, response time, fares, trip purpose, service days and hours, capacity constraints, and trip denials. CCT Connect serves areas within 3/4 of a mile of regular SEPTA bus and trolley routes, and our service policies likewise mirror bus service. While door-to-door service is not a regulatory requirement, SEPTA CCT provides door-to-door service to all customers. We may not discriminate based on trip or disability type. Individuals with physical, sensory, or psychological disabilities must receive the same level of service as those with intellectual or neurological disabilities. In addition, we may not prioritize one trip over another. A medical appointment must be assigned the same priority as a trip to the Rothman skating rink at Dilworth Park. The ADA is civil rights legislation, and equality is essential in the service SEPTA must provide. SEPTA paratransit customers expect reliability of service to improve their overall customer experience. Over the years, we have initiated many programs aimed at improving our system's performance. For example, in 2014, improvements to our no-show, late cancellation, custodial care, and disruptive behavior policies were implemented. The fleet was expanded to its current level of 457 vehicles, and additional technologies, including onboard Android tablets and cloud-based computing, were introduced. Our agency reservations and ADA application processes were streamlined, and a new, shorter ADA application followed in early 2015. Later in 2015, concurrent with efforts on our fixed route service, our boarding policy was enforced, reducing significant and pervasive fare evasion on the part of our customers. These initiatives, coupled with a concerted effort to review and cancel standing orders that went unused, resulted in a reduction of trips requested but untaken. Standing orders, regular daily trips to a specific location at the same time each day, are not a requirement of ADA regulations. They are a convenience both for our passengers and CCT's reservations and scheduling units. Federal regulations limit the number of standing orders a transit agency may provide to not more than 50% of available capacity in any hour of service. Our internal review in March 2015 revealed more than half, 58% of the riders with a cancellation rate of 90 to 100% of standing order trips were riders of our shared ride program for seniors. This level of excessive no-shows was not limited to non-ADA service, however. Continued diligent reduction of standing order service from chronic no-show late cancellation violators has brought CCT into closer compliance with our governing regulations. In addition to monthly meetings with our contractors, SEPTA management meets regularly with the public about accessibility concerns. SEPTA CCT works closely with the Shared Ride Advisory Council and participates in the quarterly meetings held by Philadelphia Corporation for Aging. Just last week, SEPTA CCT attended the general membership meeting of the Alliance for the first time. We engage in continual dialogues with the individual member organizations of the Alliance and all of the program providers we proudly serve. The welcome and valued feedback from our stakeholders, riders, advocacy organizations, and our longtime partner, the SEPTA Advisory Committee for Accessible Transportation, SAC, has helped drive the aforementioned policy initiatives. An example is the reduction of monthly customer no-shows from 9,900 in March 2014 to 3,900 at the end of last year. This has greatly improved the efficiency of service to all CCT riders. Safety and security continues to remain a top priority of SEPTA. Camera-equipped vehicle integration began in January 2015. At this time, 60% of the existing CCT fleet has been outfitted with cameras to protect both passengers and operators. We estimate that in-vehicle camera integration will be completed in 2018. CCT Connect is public transportation. Like SEPTA's other modes of transportation, our customers use paratransit for every function of daily life, including, but not limited to, job training and work, shopping, medical appointments, religious services, and day programs. They also visit family and friends, attend social events, and perform volunteer services. Just like fixed route bus, driver assistance is limited on CCT service. Federal regulations that govern paratransit service are designed to promote independent travel. Independence is the hallmark of the ADA. A person who should not travel alone on a bus or train should not travel alone on CCT. In fact, the federal regulations provide for this by requiring ADA paratransit to permit someone to have a personal care attendant travel with them at no additional cost. The federal regulations require us to apply the same rules to every customer. Special care, medical care, and custodial care are not requirements of public transit providers. Today, SEPTA CCT provides custodial care to approximately 650 riders who are at risk of wandering. While not required to do so, it is a service that exceeds ADA regulations and is offered on a limited basis to individuals who are very vulnerable. Currently, there is no additional cost applied to custodial care service. However, SEPTA CCT still experiences delays when no one is home to receive a customer, or more frequently, when riders arrive before day programs' opening hours and program staff elects not to receive them before the start time. Such situations cause lateness to other riders and can result in situations that are both dangerous and unfair to the passenger. One such example is a rider whose caregiver was not at home, the listed emergency contact was not valid, and CCT was left with the customer on board for 6 hours and 49 minutes. During this time, the rider could not be fed, toileted, or if needed, medicated by the public transit bus driver who transported him from his program. In another example, we experienced significant challenges with a young adult who lives less than 20 minutes from her program, which has a start time of 8:30 a.m. Her caregiver needs to leave for work very early in the morning. Despite our repeated efforts, the caregiver has refused to submit paperwork for custodial care service because it requires someone to be present for the driver to hand the passenger off to, both at the program and at home. On multiple occasions, the caregiver has scheduled rides that cause the young woman to arrive at her day program at 7 a.m. or even earlier. SEPTA CCT dispatchers must make a decision to delay service by keeping the vehicle on location or avoid lateness to other riders by keeping the passenger on board and continuing service. This results in returning the customer to the program well after doors open. On one occasion, the vehicle operator was instructed to leave the passenger with an arriving maintenance staff person. Because the customer is not enrolled in our custodial care service, federal regulations dictate that responsibility for the passenger ends upon arrival at the destination. Public transportation is not perfect. Beginning in late 2015, CCT's contracted service providers began experiencing labor shortages. An improved labor market and new employment opportunities adversely affected the pool of available vehicle operators. A significant number of uncovered tours forced CCT to juggle trips, and our service reliability suffered significantly. SEPTA experienced a spike in uncovered tours that impacted many of our riders. SEPTA aggressively applied every available contractual remedy to hold our contractors accountable. In addition, as the contractor for one of the Philadelphia carriers came to an end, a decision was made to split the contract in two, increasing the number of contracted carriers and reducing the work burden. This ensures a future systemic impact can be prevented in the event a contractor fails to meet its obligations. Recent data has shown a 50% reduction in the number of uncovered tours, and this positive trend is continuing. Last spring, Councilman Curtis Jones initiated a meeting with SEPTA management, our CCT providers, and union representatives to encourage our contractors' compliance with Philadelphia's living wage ordinance. SEPTA willingly renegotiated existing contracts to facilitate compliance, improve driver wages, and reduce employee turnover. The contract adjustment had an operating budget impact to SEPTA of $4.4 million. The efforts of Councilman Jones and the favorable effect of the City of Philadelphia's living wage ordinance were instrumental in stabilizing the operator workforce and improving service reliability to our customers with disabilities and Philadelphia's older adults. When our contracted workforce stabilized, a software change in 2016 impacted vehicle scheduling and caused disruption to some of our riders. SEPTA worked with our vendor tirelessly, and the issue was resolved before the end of August. Since September 2016, we have experienced a steady decline in customer complaints, as well as improvement in reliability, which is measured by our on-time performance. SEPTA CCT's service reliability has increased from 77% last summer to 83% to date. CCT must overcome many challenges on a daily basis. One of the greatest challenges any public service faces is aligning expectations with regulatory requirements. Concurrently, we balance service provision with coordination of multiple adult day programs and workshops, all of which have differing hours and drop-off procedures. Many young people with disabilities who have been in the school system with supports, including door-to-door school bus services, one-to-one staff support, and nursing care, are graduated into a public transportation system that is not only ill-equipped to handle their individual needs, it is not intended to do so. We strive daily to meet the needs of the people of the city and the region we serve. However, it is imperative to acknowledge the limitations of public transportation cannot always align with health and human service needs. The line between human service and public service provision can be easily blurred when those limitations and the provisions of law are not clearly understood. The ADA is civil rights legislation. SEPTA provided accessible service long before passage of the sweeping law. In the 26 and a half years since ADA was passed, SEPTA has worked tirelessly to meet the requirements of the United States Department of Transportation to guarantee that public transit is safe, equitable, fair, and reliable for people with disabilities. We believe that we meet and in many areas exceed the standards set forth in Title 49 of the Code of Federal Regulations, Chapter 37, which govern paratransit service. SEPTA continues to use innovation, integration, and renewal to build a future that will serve people of all abilities in Philadelphia and the southeastern Pennsylvania region. Thank you for the opportunity to offer the testimony today.
Thank you so much for your testimony. There's going to be several questions, and I guess on the panel here we have, is there any other SEPTA people testifying? Are you going to testify?
Respond to questions.
Are you going to respond to questions? Okay. State your name for the record for respond to question. Just state.
Henry Davis, Chief Officer, CCT.
All right, thank you. And also, I mean, we'll have questions, I think, here. There's going to be a lot of people testifying, so hopefully you will stay in the audience to hear some of those concerns in case there's an interest to bring you guys back up to answer some questions. Would that be fair? Yeah. All right. Councilman Jones?
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate you recognizing me. I also want to thank Councilwoman Bass for her opening statement, and the words that rang in my ear was, I want you to know that this is designed to drag out ways that we can help you. You're not here just to be roasted over a spit. This is not, we understand in your testimony, which was very long but well done, it earmarked for us, and we underscore that you have federal regulations that you have to deal with, you have budgetary constraints that you have to deal with, and we get all of that. I want to personally thank you for, because I was going to recognize the fact that about a year ago, we met with some of the CCT drivers, and they talked about some of the problems they face in trying to deliver these services. And one of them was a sense of disrespect based on what they were paid. You enlightened and educated me about the subcontractor issue. You could have thrown your hands up and said, it's not us, it's them. When the contract comes back up, we'll deal with it. That is not what you did, and I will never forget that. You stepped up, realizing that it was going to be about a $4 million impact, and did it anyway. I want for the record also that you know that I appreciate that. The hundreds of folk that use it appreciate it, including my now deceased mother who used that service. Sometimes she complained as well, but relied on it nevertheless, and without it, wouldn't have been able to get back and forth to her appointment. So I want to thank you, the drivers and staff for that. So what we hear coming after this is going to be frustration a little, or maybe a lot, but it's not designed to not recognize what your contribution is, but to figure out how we and members of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania up in Harrisburg can help with dealing with this important service to the citizens. So first of all, I wanted to say that because I didn't want you to think that you weren't going to hear that at all. So having said that, transitioning, if I could, so you have 3 or 2 subcontractors to you that you deal with.
In the city of Philadelphia, we currently have 3.
Can you name for the record those 3 subcontractors?
First Transit, MV, and Eden's Transportation.
And what is the total value of that contract?
The 3 combined, it's about $75 to $80 million.
Of which, how much does the city of Philadelphia pay versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania pay?
That I don't know. We can get that answer back to you.
Okay, and would you provide that to the chair and members of the committee? You mentioned in your testimony, but could you repeat, how many drivers and vehicles do you have?
Approximately 500 operators and 457 vehicles.
And of that, how many routes and passengers per week, month, however you want to measure it?
We call them runs, and it's about 400 to 405 runs per day during the week.
And on average, how many runs does a driver do a day?
Usually they do just one.
So a run means how many stops? All right.
Well, it depends upon how the tour is set up. It could be 6 stops, it could be 15 stops.
So the difference between 6 and 15 is probably why we are here today. Duly note that right there. That might be some of the angst that happens. Those routes are determined by dispatchers.
The routes are determined by the number of reservations we get for a given location. It could be for a given area, and then it's put into a schedule, and then it's assigned to a specific carrier.
And
for that particular area.
drivers are held to a very high standard for making those routes in a timely fashion, correct?
Yes.
And from time to time, do they get add-ons by the dispatcher?
Yes. As we have cancellations that come in to create more space in the schedule, they will get add-ons.
Which changes the route often.
We try to assign trips that are in the same basic area.
Right,
So it's
right.
very rare that we go out of the area.
So again, remember I said all those nice things in the beginning. I want you to remember that as I go forward. But it's often, there are times when someone might have a convenient route that was designed with a lot of thoughtfulness. And then a dispatcher will call and say, can you pick up, instead of somebody from Market Street, somebody from Germantown Avenue that may need to be picked up, correct?
That's rare, but it may occur.
It does happen. And I can't, at this juncture, make you tell me how many times it happens, but I think that is a factor, because then the drivers are held accountable even, so here's the kick. If they refuse that add-on, that's frowned upon, would you say that?
It's discouraged.
Yeah, it's discouraged, okay? But if they add that add-on, it changes the expectation of time, depending on the time of day, depending on the traffic. That's why some of this happens, and is the kind of thing that we need to kind of pay attention to under the logistics end of this. The other thing is that often the respect of the drivers isn't as high by other drivers as an ambulance would be. So if an ambulance comes down the street, most people of care know that somebody's in that car that needs to get to a hospital. So we tend to, not always, but we tend to move out the way. That is not the case with sometimes your CCT drivers, including double parking, and people just refuse to move because it's not an ambulance. And that creates a logistical nightmare at times, is that correct?
Yes.
So if I'm in a narrow street and I'm picking up somebody, and somebody double parks, I have to wait, because backing up out of that street is not an option.
That's correct.
Because if they hit a car, are the drivers held liable?
Yes.
And one instance can result in the removal of a driver's job.
Depending upon the incident, yes.
Most of the time, right? You're a pretty truthful guy most of the time, right?
Well, no, it depends. We
You
have
ain't
some
on the
operators.
oath.
We
You
have
ain't on
some.
the oath, but
That's okay. We have instances where operators will have more than one accident in their driving career. It depends upon the incident. Based upon the severity and how culpable they are, it may result in a one-time accident and they're done.
so I think it would, let me phrase it differently. You hold them to a high standard on the number of accidents, so backing down the street might be considered risky driving.
Yes, we discourage that unless there's someone there on the ground to actually guide the vehicle out, because it's a difficult maneuver.
And so on that other balance, Mr. Chairman and author of this bill, Councilwoman Bass, they're held to that standard, so they have to make a career decision. And back then, it was $7 an hour, career decision? Wasn't that back when we met, before that, about $7 an hour?
They were closer to $9 an hour. Now they're about $12.30, $12.40.
That's from your actions of that living wage. But if I gotta make a decision, and then this is how people eat, whether I'm gonna back out of this street, clip a car, possibly be fired, or wait until they move and then be chastised on the other end because I didn't make my routes in time. I just want to give a sense of this committee what they face. And then by the time they get to a customer, they're mad. And rightfully so, because there's an expectation of time. If they have a doctor's appointment to get to, they're penalized on the other end. So one of the things that we need to recognize those challenges, just like you put them in. I listened to you and I read it. We need to put that because, people might want to dump on the drivers and not understand their regulatory and job challenges. I think, quite frankly, we need to invest a little more in training. We talked about that in closed door. Like, they get thrown out into the wilderness a little bit. I think you give 1 hour. How many hours of training do the drivers get?
They get 32 hours of training down at SEPTA, but then the carriers are also required to give them training all the way through to proficiency.
All right. So I'm going to stop at this point because the chairman is kneeing me under the table. That's enough, Councilman. But I'll wait for another round. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilman Jones. And I know we have other witnesses here to testify. Councilman O, you have a question for SEPTA?
I do. Thank you very much. I'm just trying to make sure I understand the kind of the financing here. So SEPTA is complying with the federal regulations and has outsourced to 3 companies the services of providing the rides to persons with disabilities. And according to your written testimony, it costs about $47.9 million per year to provide approximately 103,000 passengers rides on a monthly basis. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you talked about like $80 million, is that separate and apart from the expenses of providing these rides? Is it actually $80 million per year on a monthly basis to provide 103,000 passengers transportation?
No, that was the approximate value of the contracts.
The value of the
contracts. Yeah, we have individual contracts with those 3 providers, and I was trying to answer the question by giving an approximate number of the value of the contract.
What's the difference between the value of the contract at $80 million and basically $48 million to provide the service? There's $48 million on an annual basis to provide these rides to persons with disabilities, and then the value is $80 million. What is the difference in that number?
Well, the $80 million, it wouldn't be a one-year contract. All of our contracts are 5 years in length. So that's one of the primary differences. And then the other difference is we have suburban providers as well, which aren't included in that $47 million that you're talking about now. That's just for the city of Philadelphia.
So if I need a ride to Delaware County and back, is that included in the $48 million, or is that not included in the $48 million?
In the example you just cited, the ride originated in Philadelphia, so that would probably be given to a Philadelphia provider to go into the county. Your ride back may be from a county provider back into the city of Philadelphia, which would be different.
Okay, so every ride within the city is included in $48 million, and then there may be additional amounts of money provided to the vendors if they are giving a ride to someone from a suburban area back into the city.
Yes, that would be a different contract and a different provider, yes.
Okay. So what I understand based on these numbers is that at minimum for 103,000 passengers on a monthly basis at $47.9 million, it is about $39 per passenger per day.
It's pretty close. It's pretty close, yes.
And if I assume, and I don't know, I'm just saying if I assume that on average people are taking one ride out and one ride in, because I know it takes a while, they're not taking 3 or 4 rides, but assuming, I could be wrong, that is about $19.5 per ride, if we just assume that they're leaving and coming back one time per day.
That sounds close, but keeping in mind, we pay our contractors by revenue hour, so it's not so much the number of trips, it's the amount of time it takes to provide the service.
And can I ask, based on all the testimony that was provided, the limitations, and all that, is this model the best model available for SEPTA to provide this service? I mean, with smartphones today and the ability to pick up people and deliver them on location with GPS and bring them back, wheelchair accessible vehicles, is that better than providing a kind of, or should that be added to the options that riders have?
Right now, it's currently, it's a good model. However, we just met with a consultant Friday just passed, and we've asked them to come in and analyze our service. That's one of the things we want them to look at. If they know a way for us to do something better, we want that information. If they have best practices we're not applying right now, we want that information. But for the moment, it's a good model.
CCT is a good model, is what you're saying, for
Yes.
right now?
Yes.
Okay. I've heard complaints, and I suppose, I don't know what the testimony is going to be, but I've heard complaints that kind of go on these lines, that CCT is unreliable, it often shows up late, people get on, because they have to drop off many people, and I'm not saying it's the driver's fault, there may be, traffic jams, other rainy days, slippery road, but for someone who needs to get someplace on time, the professional, their job, doctor's appointment, for people who need to get there on time at a cost of $19.5 coming and going, wouldn't it be a better option for SEPTA to provide a resource whereby SEPTA is encouraging private providers with wheelchair accessible vehicles to respond, and we can track their, the time they're picked up, the time they're dropped off, and those type of things?
That is a model that we have looked at. However, just at the end of December, the Federal Transit Administration issued guidance to public transit providers that place severe limits on our ability to do that. More or less, because the bottom line of the guidance says, you can do this, but you can't do it because, and it lists every option, all of the arguments that you've just made for doing that are things that the FTA is saying that we're not able to do. We have talked to organizations that have piloted programs, and based on their pilots, they've actually seen an increase in cost. They haven't seen cost savings. While it has, I don't know if they've got feedback in terms of improving the efficiency, but the civil rights aspect of ADA essentially prevents us from exploring that option further at this time.
So I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. As an attorney, could you explain that to me? Like, what about the Federal Transportation Administration in terms of the guidelines that they've provided you would prevent you from using or contracting with Freedom Cab, wheelchair accessible, Uber? So they have written into those guidelines that you will be penalized, or you are not. You said that you can do it, but you can't do it.
We can't use federal dollars for something that would not really be equivalent service. For example, in the city, I know I was present here for the November 30th hearing, and one of the things that we heard loud and clear was the lack of wheelchair accessible cabs in the city. With the demand that we have for vehicles, equivalent service would not be achieved based on the number of wheelchair accessible vehicles currently in the city. For us to provide or subsidize that kind of service, we would have to be able to prove equivalent service, and at that time that does not exist. In addition, the guidance spoke to things like access to technology, because everyone does not have a cell phone or smartphone. everyone does not have a credit card, people are unbanked, that those things are considered barriers, and as civil rights legislation, if there are barriers, there would be a discriminatory factor.
Thank you very much. I will take a look at that. Sounds so odd to me, you know, that would be the case, but we've seen that before. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Feltenberger?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. West, thank you very much for your testimony. I thought it was very complete and a very good overview of what is going on. But I do have a question on something particular, what went on. And you had mentioned in your testimony, one example is a rider whose caregiver was not at home. The listed emergency contact was not valid. The CCT was left with customer on board for 6 hours and 49 minutes. That's pretty horrendous all around. And of course, the person could not get any medication or needed anything else or needed to use the facilities. Is there a law against that?
Yes.
Was that imposed in any way? I mean, I think that's egregious. The poor person that happened to, that's awful.
The only thing we can do is report it to Adult Protective Services. Whether action was taken beyond that, we would not be aware, but we can report those type of incidents.
If I asked to go a little further, not here, and I understand, and you weren't prepared for that, and I wasn't prepared to ask, but now that I saw it, I would hate to be that person that had that happen to them. Could you dig a little deeper and find out what was the final result of that? I mean, I think that's unbelievably terrible.
We typically don't. We will follow up in filing our reports. We may look at the pattern of rides. In egregious situations such as that individual, I believe, stopped riding after that particular incident. I have seen other incidents where we have people who will do this chronically.
But it may not have been that person's fault at all, wasn't it? I wouldn't say that it was totally their fault. I mean...
in that specific instance, the caregiver, when she did finally show up, said, I just didn't make other arrangements today.
Really? Okay. Ms. West, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Councilman Jones?
Yeah, real quick. How do we compare to other systems? Like, how do we rank? How are we as big in Cali? Do they have a system? New York or Chicago?
Every transit system that provides regular fixed route service must provide some type of accessible service, whether it's complimentary paratransit service, deviated fixed route service. So every fixed route system must have a provision in place for people with disabilities.
So ATL, DC, how do we rank?
We are the 6th largest in terms of quality of service. I can tell you that I worked 10 years for New York City Transit's paratransit division. I was quite surprised when I came here because I found that SEPTA CCT does much, much more for riders than New York City. One of the things I referenced in my testimony was door-to-door service. It's not a requirement under the federal regulations. In New York, it's curb to curb. The bus stops, the person gets on, the bus stops, the person gets off. There's no escorting to the door. There's absolutely no custodial care. So in many areas, we do exceed the requirements of the federal regulations.
So we're 6th largest. Do we serve the counties as well? I think I heard. So are you responsible for the contracts in the county as well?
Yes.
And so what's tail wagging the dog? Are we bigger in the county or bigger in Philly proper? More routes?
The city has much more ridership than the counties do.
And is that a separate contract with a separate provider?
Yes, we have a contract with each one of the individual providers in each one of the counties.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Feltenberger?
Ms. West, then a follow-up with your experience in New York. Correct me if I'm wrong, or tell me as you saw it, you were there in New York. A situation where someone was waiting on the bus for nearly 7 hours. That would not happen in New York because they would then put the person at the bus stop. Is that correct? Or
That's correct. They would put them off the vehicle, and the vehicle would continue
they're off the
on.
vehicle and they move on.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions? Seeing none, I know we wanted to read the whole panel at that time, but I guess Ms. Grober, if you're available, state your name for the record and then continue with your testimony.
Yes, my name is Deborah Grober, and I'm a person with multiple disabilities. I am low vision, postlingually deaf, also called late deafened, and I am a survivor of several traumatic brain injuries. Thank you very much for allowing me to testify today. One of the things that I also wanted to mention that I am Vice Chairperson of the SEPTA Advisory Committee for Accessible Transportation, also called the SAC, that works with SEPTA. What prompted me to testify today is that I understand that the Alliance of Community Service Providers, the Alliance, and others have raised concerns regarding the transportation services provided by CCT to the individuals attending or working at member agencies. And I know that some of these have been already discussed. As we have alluded to, under federal regulations, CCT is only required to provide services that are comparable to the level of service provided to individuals without disabilities who use a fixed route system. So obviously it is not required to provide the door-to-door service that CCT Connect provides as a courtesy. Just as a bus or a subway does not provide door-to-door service to the passengers that take fixed route. With CCT Connect, as some of you may know, the ride is scheduled by a reservation system that searches for available times, either 1 hour up to 1 hour before or 1 hour after the time that is requested. And once the time has been accepted by the passenger, then rides can be scheduled to arrive at the customer's pickup location 10 minutes before or 20 minutes after the time that is accepted by the customer. Yes, occasionally the CCT ride is later than the scheduled time, but this is just like fixed route buses are late, subways are late. Often subways and buses can be even canceled, as we have found recently. And I think that this is just to be like, it is unrealistic to think that a ride would never be late. And CCT Connect's on-time performance traditionally has been in the 80-85% or above range. Now, the Alliance and its members has argued that the fluctuation in the pickup times can be difficult with them meeting the work obligations and the other obligations. Now, just like SEPTA for the fixed route transportation, they don't they're not responsible for individuals, family members. Schedule CCT Connect is not responsible for working around these schedules of like individuals or families once a ride has been accepted. I would argue that it's up to the individuals once they accept a ride to work their schedule around that. One thing that really hasn't been discussed yet is that the Alliance and the member agencies have complained that it's difficult for their clients and their workers to secure rides around the prime times, around 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. And this is just because it's some of the busiest times. Now, unfortunately, many people with and without disabilities are trying to commute to and from work during these times. Now, this makes it difficult for all CCT riders, both the clients and the workers of the nonprofit agencies as well as all the other CCT riders to try to get rides at this time. Now, the Alliance and its members have proposed having standing orders for their clients and workers as this being a viable option. Well, as Ms. West mentioned, this is really not the answer to the problem because even though standing orders are permissible under the ADA, they are not required, and there's actually a limit on the number of standing orders that are available. Ms. West had mentioned that there is a limit of 50% of all rides can be standing orders. No more than 50% of all rides can be standing orders unless there is excessive capacity in the system. And we really haven't seen excessive capacity within the CCT Connect system that I know of. Now, in the resolution, the argument has been made that public transportation services such as CCT are critical for the most vulnerable members of the community and should be made available in an equal, fair, and reliable manner. I think that everyone wholeheartedly agrees with this. But I think that if City Council is to acquiesce and to give in to what the Alliance and its member agencies are asking for, such as door-to-door transportation and standing orders for all their clients and workers, equal, fair, and reliable transportation would not only be impossible for their clients, it would not be possible for the rest of the population that desperately needs to rely upon CCT. And these are people that need to rely upon CCT to go to work, doctor's appointments, dialysis, meetings, day programs, and the many other locations that they travel to on a daily basis. CCT Connect is always striving for improvement, and that is why the SEPTA Advisory Committee for Accessible Transportation continues to meet on a monthly basis. And it's a committee along with SEPTA that gets together and talks about ways that we can improve and to improve upon on-time performance, find out ways that we can make the system better. And these meetings are open to the public. But I believe that currently CCT Connect is already more than adequately and safely meeting the needs of seniors and those with disabilities who cannot take accessible fixed-route transportation. I think that, in my opinion, if Resolution 160798 were to be passed, the system would become terribly overburdened, and CCT would no longer be able to meet the needs of many of its riders. So, for this reason, I ask that the resolution not go forward, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your testimony. I think it's important to realize, like you said, I mean, in any aspect of government, we're always looking for the best possible product, and there's always room for improvement. We, as a city, know that by working together and listen to concerns, often makes a product better. So even the dialogue that we're having today, I think, helps us as a city, us as SEPTA, the residents, the constituents, the people in need. To hear these things gives us that opportunity to look at ways to make this system better. Not that nobody's by any means is calling this a failure, but just looking at improving on things can help everyone as we move forward. Is there any other questions to this panel? Seeing none, can we please, clerk, please have the title of the second panel?
Sherry Brummins and Graham Gill.
Thank you. Just state your name for the record and then proceed with your testimony, and then we'll wait till both of you are done testifying before we have questions. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, City Council members. Thank you for your time today. Just one really quick thing. I do want to mention that on the schedule, our last panelist under panel 3 is unexpectedly hospitalized and will not be here today, so we shouldn't be expecting Katie Finn. Thank you again. My name is Sherry Brummins, and I'm the Executive Director of the Alliance of Community Service Providers. The Alliance is essentially a trade association. We represent providers of behavioral health, intellectual disabilities, and autism services, and those providers who also work with individuals who are struggling with drug and alcohol rehabilitation issues. So, as you know, we're here today to bring attention to an issue that's of great concern to the Alliance and its providers. The issue is that CCT, a subcontractor of SEPTA, has failed to meet a number of the transportation needs for the people that we serve. Specifically, we have issues with pickup and drop-off times, that they are unreliable and often result in unsafe conditions for the consumer. In addition, drivers have been on numerous occasions rude and clearly unaware of how to work with the population that we serve. And finally, providers have experienced financial losses in the hundreds of thousands of dollars due to an inability to bill for the people that they have staffed for, but who don't arrive on time, if at all. These issues are long-standing, and we believe they need to change. And we're here today to find a collaborative approach and to speak out loud so that we can all hear and wrestle with the issues that are at hand here today. Looking forward, federal and state mandates will require that individuals spend far less time in congregate care settings and much more time out into the community. Public transportation needs to keep up with these mandates. And so we believe that now is the time to get serious about where improvement is needed so that we can be better prepared to meet the needs of the people that we serve. You'll hear today from some individuals, family members, and a provider who rely or work with CCT for transportation needs. Reliable transportation is clearly essential to all of us, and to the individuals that we serve within the Alliance organizations, CCT is often the only option that they have for transportation. Finding and securing meaningful employment can be a challenge for any of us. And for a person with a disability, there are oftentimes numerous obstacles to overcome. Once a person has a job, they need to be reliable and on time. It's not enough to simply give an employer a 2-hour window for when they can arrive to work or leave at the end of the day. It is also the case that the family members and caretakers who support these people cannot tell their employer that they may or may not get to work at a certain time. It's important that everybody has consistency. If I personally were to use a cab or Uber or another form of transportation, I could get myself from my home to my place of employment within 15 or 20 minutes. And so we believe that while maybe it's not that, it could be something better than a 2-hour time frame. You will hear and read testimony of stories about individuals who have been dropped off hours earlier than programs open for the day or taken home before the agreed upon time. Both scenarios have led to people being left outside in extreme temperatures to fend for themselves. This is, of course, a serious liability, and I don't believe that any of us can afford to wait until a catastrophe happens before we do something about the practice. By law, providers must staff their programs appropriately for the number of people who will attend a program on any given day. If and when a person arrives too early, there are not enough employees to stay in compliance with state and federal regulations, they cannot serve that person. Or if they do, they are taking a big risk. When someone arrives several hours late or not at all, providers lose money because they can only bill for the time when a person is physically on the premises. These losses can reach up to anywhere between $300,000 and $500,000 a year, and this, let's remember, is taxpayer money. The other impact is that individuals lose services when they don't use them. These services are essential to keep people thriving in the community, and so we don't want to lose those services for the individuals we are working with. The CMS final rule will be implemented in early 2018 and will impact about 7,000 people with ID alone in the city of Philadelphia. That means that does not include autism. That's another group, that's another number. The final rule requires providers to support individuals in the community and will drastically reduce the likelihood that someone would simply be picked up in one location in the morning and dropped off at that same place by the end of the day. To the contrary, people will be moving around the city much more, and if we do not get a handle on fixing the current issues, this will only get worse. We believe that owning the issues now will greatly benefit CCT in the long run in that they can look honestly and transparently at the unique challenges before them. We've reached out on numerous occasions to collaborate with SEPTA. Our desire is for a collaborative approach that both serves the needs of those individuals who rely on CCT services and prepares the system for what's going to happen in 2018. We're very interested in finding solutions such as lobbying for increased federal and state funding. We've offered to help and assist with training of their staff so that they can have a better perspective from people who are actually working with individuals with disabilities. And we just want solutions that make sense for the world that we live in. I really believe that we can get better. I do believe that technology can be utilized better, and I don't think that we should see a lack of cell phones or technology as a block. I think we can also solve for that problem too. And I don't want the tail to be wagging the dog when we're thinking about collaborative solutions. So thank you for your time.
Please continue. State your name and proceed.
I'm Graham Gill, Executive Director at Programs Employing People, and I thank the Council for the opportunity to address you today. Over the course of 2016 and many years prior, we've regularly been faced with challenges in dealing with SEPTA CCT services for our consumers at Programs Employing People. PEP provides services to individuals with intellectual disabilities, and their family and caregivers rely on CCT services to transport their loved ones safely and in a timely manner. We as a provider agency servicing intellectually disabled community rely on the paratransit system to transport most of our consumers into our program and to pick up consumers in a timely fashion to adhere to our hours of operations. We support up to 130 individuals daily, and 85 utilize both SEPTA and CCT services to attend our program. As a nonprofit agency providing services to some of the most vulnerable citizens in our community, the financial viability of our services is directly tied
to their timely attendance of the consumers to our programs. PEP has been burdened with accommodating the erratic service of SEPTA by having agency staff arrive earlier in the day at the center and staying later, which creates a cost burden for us. The office staff and service coordinators have to dedicate a sizable piece of their workday to deal with SEPTA concerns. PEP's program hours are typically 8:30 to 3:30, and the building opens at 8 o'clock to receive consumers and stays open until 6:30. Consumers are routinely dropped off before the building opens at 8 a.m. They're also brought in well past the start of the program day and picked up both well before the scheduled day end, as early as 2 p.m., and well past the end of the programs at 3:30. Following is a financial assessment on the impact of CCT services based on late arrivals and early pickups in a 3-month analysis from September through November. PEP lost $20,551 during that 3-month period due to late arrivals and early pickups. That extrapolates out to $82,202 annually. There have been years where we have lost up to $185,000 in a year due to late arrivals and early pickups. However, these numbers do not include the expenses incurred for staffing to accommodate early arrivals or late departures when you have hourly staff that have to stay beyond their normal shift of work waiting for CCT to arrive. As far as the consumer's impact, the circumstances range from just nuisances to outright neglect. Consumers frequently are kept on vans for extended periods, sometimes between 2 and 3 hours, and at times causing individuals to have toileting accidents or missing scheduled meal times. As a moral question, it is unfathomable how human beings can be treated with such disregard by a system with a total lack of responsibility and decency. Families are panicked about the whereabouts of their loved ones, and sometimes consumers become so distressed they're pushed to the point that they can start acting out because of their overwhelming frustration. Consistency is crucial for many of our consumers. We work to create a safe and appropriate supported environment to ensure the best possible outcomes, and yet the frustrations alone caused by SEPTA CCT put their successes in jeopardy. This environment's broken when consumers face indifference and neglect. The lack of response from SEPTA in dealing with these concerns fuels the frustration we all face. Some of the most egregious incidents include a nonverbal, intellectually disabled individual being abandoned at the back of our building an hour and a half before the building opened. This case was reported to the state and the Department of Behavioral Health and Intellectual Disability Services. An investigation found there to be neglect. Consumers have been left unattended outside of our facility anywhere from a half hour to an hour and a half before our building opens and left in extreme weather conditions. This morning alone, an elderly consumer was left at the locked gates at our entrance at 7 a.m. in 30-some degree weather. It's unexcusable. If the city declares a code blue, individuals living with intellectual disabilities, as well as the homeless, as well as people with behavioral health issues, and many others, should not be left unattended in the community. If a family member can't abandon a vulnerable human being, then CCT should not be allowed to abandon them. And abandonment may be a strong word when somebody's simply dropping somebody off at a day program or at their home, but essentially that's what's happening if there's not a caregiver to take and be responsible for that individual. Do not leave unattended, or custodial care forms are not readily available for caregivers. Given a recent search for the form is not included in the application packet, nor can it be found on the website. It is a service that is offered but not readily available. Families don't know about this. Yet families are seemingly blamed for not having a form filed with SEPTA when their loved one is dropped off at a center that hasn't opened. A consumer was dropped off at PEP without his necessary medical equipment, which was a simple walker. When we called SEPTA to ask for it to be returned that morning, we were told they would provide a telephone number for this consumer to call, and that he would be required to make arrangements to go and pick it up at some location later in the day. Only after much discussion with the customer service department at SEPTA was the equipment returned about 3 hours later in the morning. Following are some random date examples or samples for arrivals and drop-offs at our program. In the month of March of 2016, 4 CCT consumers arrived at PEP before 7:30 a.m. 136 of the riders during the month arrived at PEP after 9:30. That's an hour after their start time in the program. 150 of those riders that month were picked up after 4 o'clock p.m. Random samples from October 2016. 42 consumers were dropped off at PEP before 8 o'clock, including times of 7:20, 7:22. 138 consumers were dropped off at PEP after 9:30. 99 consumers were picked up after 4 o'clock, and as late between 5 and 6 o'clock that evening. And the last example I want to give you is a random week selection from November 7th to 10th. 3 consumers were dropped off before 8 a.m., 51 consumers were dropped off after 9:30 a.m., and 55 consumers were picked up after 4 o'clock p.m. Most recently, a driver not bringing consumers to PEP saw a young female employee walking up to PEP on Federal Street and began asking her from his van for personal information. And while the staff ignored the comments and waved him off, he proceeded to park his vehicle on the street and pursue her into our building, past the main entrance, and proceeded up a staircase in pursuit. When that individual was stopped by the office staff, he finally presented himself as a CCT employee, as though it gave him some sort of license to stalk and harass a young female employee. Now, granted, that is an outlier, I'm sure. SEPTA has very, very many good and kind drivers. But this stuff seems to go unchecked. In closing, we would like to note that SEPTA management and CCT Chief Officer Henry Davis, Frank Brandis, the Director of Service Operations, and Cassandra West, ADA Compliance Officer, met with PEP management on November 15th. At their request, we were quite surprised and delighted to be able to communicate with the CCT officers. We shared our general concerns and data with the CCT management team. Within days of the meeting, a SEPTA supervisor had been assigned to PEP in the morning and the afternoon to monitor pickups and drop-offs, and his presence continues to this date. While the CCT drivers appear more cordial in the supervisor's presence and spend less time lollygagging in the lobby when picking up or dropping off consumers, there's been no notable improvement in timely arrival or departure. Lateness in drop-offs and early or very late pickups have continued at a dismal rate, indicating deep-rooted management and scheduling issues within SEPTA CCT operations. Up and down the line, SEPTA is failing. It is failing our businesses, but more importantly, it's failing our community. There needs to be a proper and thorough training of contracted companies, of drivers, of in-house personnel. There needs to be culture of excellence in customer service and accountability for how SEPTA cares for its riders. SEPTA needs to treat riders and their families with respect and dignity. We haven't seen that with early drop-offs outside of a building on a cold morning. It's unacceptable. Our tax dollars pay for these services, and we demand services that reflect courtesy, compassion, and dignity. I want to thank you again for the opportunity to present to you today.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Gull, and also Ms. Brummins. And I hear your coordination and, I guess, collaboration or trying to work with SEPTA and their advisory team. During that process, and I guess, Mr. Gill, just that you had stated that when you made certain inquiries, there was some response to that. It just doesn't seem like that response is working to get a better product.
Exactly.
When you reach out to SEPTA, they seem amenable to making these changes. Is there a grievance process that you file when you see something that is wrong, similar to the person who followed the person into the building?
We reported it to SEPTA management through the customer service department.
Do you follow that up after you report that to see if there was anything done with that employee, or?
We will not be given that information because that would be confidential employee action. So we don't know what occurred. I would assume that some training would be done or disciplinary action. But I can't tell you what occurred in that particular case. Okay. My office manager, who does most of the contacts for us, indicated that when we notify the office, then we request a call back, and they will, somebody with higher authority than whoever's monitoring the phones will call back and provide information, but not the details as to the outcome.
But so your report, not that you're saying you're getting the end result that you want, but the communication and the lines of communication are open between you and SEPTA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but not necessarily the follow-through that one would expect.
Okay, maybe that's something that we need to work on a little better. Also, with SEPTA being able to have some type of formal grieving process and then somehow figuring out what the result of that grievance was, I think would help you understand not only that they're taking your concern seriously, but there is a repercussion or an action to that concern, I think would be helpful. When you hear these bad incidents that are going on throughout the system, and you gave certain facts of people being picked up either before or after their deadlines. We heard that, I think it was in the 80s, 80 percentile of on-time travel. Do you see that same percentage by what your studies show?
We've seen great variance in our attendance figures over the years. As I said, this past year, I don't have the percentages in my report with respect to on-time arrivals or departures, but we can certainly get those numbers for you if it's important. But we see it more in the revenue lost or not lost. But the bottom line is, we're a fee-for-service organization, and so when somebody arrives late and leaves early, whether it's 15 minutes or 3 hours combined for a day, that directly affects our revenue for providing services to our people, because we can only bill for the time they're there. It also is extraordinarily disruptive to the quality of the supports the consumer receives when they're planning on spending a 7-hour day in their program activities. So it's distressing to them, and they're not getting the full benefit of the services that we can provide to them.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Jones.
Yeah, real quick, if either of you know, what is the percentage of senior ridership versus Americans, people with disabilities?
Do you mean uniquely the case for each, or like what of the people who have disabilities are also seniors? Is that what you're asking? So if an organization that we represent is talking about their ridership and the people they serve, they're going to have some sort of behavioral health, intellectual disability, autism, or drug and alcohol issue. So by nature of the fact that those providers belong to the Alliance, they would be working with people like that. So I think the question is, which of them are also seniors, if we're talking about this group? Okay.
In my program, approximately 15% of the people that we support are senior citizens and are in a senior citizen-specific program.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Councilman Dom?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for being here today. What do you think the solution is?
I think that the demand response system that SEPTA has is well-intentioned. They don't have the capacity, I believe, to handle the number of people requiring the service to do it in a timely manner. I mean, earlier the members of your panel had talked about other on-demand response systems such as Uber or the cab services. And it is something that the Alliance and provider agencies have knocked around to try and see, would this be a better recommendation to go and seek funding for? Now, our consumers are all supported through Medicaid waiver program. And with that funding, they use Medicaid waiver money to pay for their transportation to buy SEPTA passes to ride on SEPTA services. Now, the cost to SEPTA, it may be much higher than the value of that pass, but they're also, I am assuming, receiving additional funds either through the city or the federal government or the state transportation authority. I don't know exactly how that breaks out. But if using an Uber or a cab service would be a viable alternative financially, I think that we'd be much better off.
Well, I will say this. I agree with my colleague, Councilman O, that it's something we need to look at because I think your service will improve dramatically, and I think the cost could be cut in half. So, in the business world, when you can improve service 50% and cut your cost by 50%, it's usually a pretty good option.
Yeah, agreed.
Coming from a businessman. So, thank you. Are there any other questions for this panel? Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
I also have written testimony from individuals who are not here today. I can, if someone wants to hand them to you. Thank you.
Yes. Sergeant Arms will pick them up. Thank you very much. Clerk, could you please read the next panel, please?
Rita Shaw, Richard Roberts, Jimmy and John Sink, and Katie Finn.
So listen. Okay, hello. Who, me? Hi, Al. Jim, hold on. Oh. Yeah, but I was going to talk. I want to talk to you. Jimmy will, yeah.
Go ahead, I'm going to put you right here in this chair. Yeah, you can. Okay, are you okay? Do you want to push up a little bit so you can hear in the microphone?
Thank you, everybody, for coming for testimony. What we could do is, what you do, you state your name first for the record and then just proceed with your testimony. We'll let you all testify, and if there's any questions by the board, we'll ask them when you're all completed. So we'll start here to the left, all the way to the left first. State your name for the record and then testify, and then we'll go to the right.
Rita Shah.
Now you start with your testimony.
We have a daughter.
Bring your mic real close to you, though. There you go.
I'm a parent of a disabled daughter, Nancy, 22 years old. Me and my husband, we work both full-time. We have to leave our home at a certain time.
Everybody's benefit back here, including the interpreters. Can people speak more into the mic? It's really difficult to hear back here. Thank you.
Excuse, say that again?
Speak closer to the mic. We're having difficulty hearing back here.
Okay.
You want to speak closer to the mic?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have to leave our home at a certain time. My daughter, she started to use this CCT since September. Since September to January, there were very few days that went without frustration. The 10 minutes window and 20 minutes window is not working at all for us. Most of the time, the bus came more than 20 minutes late, or if it came early, more than 20 minutes early. 2 weeks before, it happened that the bus came more than 15 minutes early. My home is like 10 minutes away from the workshop that she goes. So 10 minutes window and plus 10 minutes early, and she is the only rider. Most of the time, she's the only rider in the bus. So because she went early, so she was put on a suspension for 2 weeks. So for 2 weeks, we have to deal with her CCT, and my husband, he had to drop her off. I had to take every day a few hours off to pick her up without the services. Now, insult to that injury, the suspension was over on this Sunday, past Sunday, so I was able to schedule 3 days in advance for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So when I called for Thursday, customer service said that because she's on suspension, she cannot schedule. So while I was talking to the person, she canceled already scheduled time that was on Tuesday because something popped up on the screen that she's on suspension without confirming with anything. Now she cannot put back to the original time. So these things happen like every day. Every day it is frustrating, and we cannot like deal with this. Very few days went like in a smooth ride. There is no consistency in customer service and reservation. When you talk to a manager, the manager is supposed to come back to you. I never got any response. One time I filed a complaint. I never got anybody got back to me. And this thing happens like most of the time.
Thank you for your testimony. Again, we'll ask questions once everybody's completed. So if you could state your name next for the record and then proceed with your testimony.
I'm Jim. They call me Jim. I'm Jim's dad. I'm John Sinkway. Councilman Taubenberger, who's leaving, happens to...
Hi, Tom.
Al.
It's me, Jimmy. I want to see you.
Okay.
I know. I want to.
Al's daughter used to be his...
He's all right.
His babysitters. Right now. Okay, Jim. Have a
All
seat.
right, Jimmy. Come on, Jimmy.
Jim,
we
have
want
a
to hear
seat.
what you have to say.
All right. I'm Jimmy's dad.
I got 2 jobs.
Go ahead. Tell him real quick.
Well, a shop, and I'm a beekeeper.
Jimmy's a beekeeper through CIS job coaching. He has one of the most successful companies.
Excellent bees, excellent honey. Honey does not go bad.
Okay. Jim, let me stop.
Go ahead.
So Jimmy needs to get to his job. Just a few specifics.
Just state, I know you're Jimmy's dad, just state your name again.
John Sinkway.
Okay, go ahead.
So Jimmy, say he gets picked up, not prime time. Jimmy gets picked up at 10 a.m. in the morning, okay? So he's not prime time. There's times when he might not get picked up till 11:30 in the morning, but his job goes from like 10:45 to 1. There's been times when the bus driver will call Jimmy and say,
Give me 5 minutes.
yeah, Jimmy's pickup is at 1 o'clock. His job coach will say, we'll be there in 2 minutes. They'll get there at like 1:06, his ride was at 1, and the bus driver's gone. They'll call CCT, they'll say, Jimmy's bus driver was there till 1:13. CIS says, the job coach says, we were there at 1:13, we were there at 1:06. You're going to hear stories, it's all the same. You know, you make a system that's a service that's supposed to serve people that have disabilities. And then I hear SEPTA say that we're not here to do door-to-door, we're not here to, don't expect us to be able to help them, but yet it's a service for people with disabilities. They don't work, they don't walk, they don't talk, they don't move as fast as us, okay? You know, I have a business in Philly, and I look at it, you know, I have an analytical mind. They're missing empathy. They have nothing for consumers that use the service that, you know, where there's not like a 3-minute window or a 4-minute window. Now, somebody doesn't show up for half an hour, I understand that. But most of these instances with Jimmy, it's been like minutes. Like, you know, there was an instance once where Jimmy had to come to my shop. He gets picked up at Welsh and Varee, has to go down to Keystone Street near the Tacony Bridge. And I'm saying, I call him, Jim, where are you? I'm up in the Chamonix Mall. What are you doing up there? He says, Dad, I'm on the bus. He went from Welsh and Varee up to the Chamonix Mall to come down to the Tacony Bridge area, to Wissinoming. And it's like the logistics. I just think sometimes it's just who makes these plans. And I think if I was running that business, like, how do these things happen? When he used to work at Temple, he used to bust tables.
I had two James. There was two James.
Hold on.
James.
I'll tell him.
Hold on, I wasn't finished. There was two James. This guy was James Bickley and Lay. I don't live here. And this Lay, I would live here, and she dropped me off.
There's two James that work at Temple. So they open the door, it says James. Jimmy gets on. Don't check ID, don't check who he is. Jimmy gets dropped off in Upper Darby. The lady says, get out of the bus. And I'm at home like, Jim, where are you? Still on the bus. It's like 3 hours, okay? She never checked his ID because she picked up the wrong James. That's the empathy part, like just the human element, like these people are disabled. They're not looking for sympathy. They're just looking for an extra 5 minutes. They're looking for a helping hand. You know, if you're going to make a system that's for people with disabilities, then maybe you should, in your bylaws, maybe Philadelphia could be a little bit different. And that's about it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony.
Thanks.
Hi, my name is Richard Rowland.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Richard Rowland. And sometimes I have problems with CC Connect. Sometimes they'll come early or sometimes they'll come late. And I'm visually impaired. Sometimes they'll won't escort me to the door or not take me to the bus. Or sometimes they'll come and say, you're 10 minutes early and you gotta, and I tell them sometimes, wait, they won't late, they'll leave you.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Thank you for your testimony. I do want to say that this was very impressive, that you're willing to come up here and testify and give your story. It's important for us to hear as council, but also as the citizens of the city of Philadelphia to hear. And we know we need to do a better job. And, you know, whether it's through SEPTA and their contractors, whether it's through training of their contractors, empathy should be something that is given to all. And understanding, I think, is something that goes a long way. Mistakes do happen, unfortunately. Hopefully, when these mistakes happen, there is, again, a grievance process that we could follow to make sure that we can learn from those mistakes, you know, and what it is that we need to do. And that's the purpose of this hearing. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Bass for bringing this up, and also to be able to work to make this system a better system. Your testimony today will help do that. So what you have done has actually helped us here as the city and help SEPTA and help CCT to come up with ways to better the system, to make sure that we're paying attention to all the concerns of our constituent base. So I want to thank you again. I think it takes a lot of courage to come up here and testify. I think you have done a great job, so thank you so much. And Councilwoman Bass, you have questions?
Thank you. I just wanted to echo the chairman's statement and thanks, and you know, really for you coming out today and sharing your stories with us, because it really does help us get a sense of what the problem is and what we need to do to be helpful in this matter. And I think that we can all agree, and we certainly hope that SEPTA would agree, that the detail, the level of detail that is required for a SEPTA or a CCT driver, and specifically is at a higher level than I think in most of the other drivers that SEPTA may encounter for transit users. So we certainly hope that the folks from SEPTA would recognize that the level of detail and making sure that things that are done make sense. Like, you don't drop, if someone's been on a CCT vehicle for, beyond a certain amount of time, that should be a red flag. If they, you're dropping them off and, you're dropping them off at a place and they say, well, wait a minute, I need some help, or this is unfamiliar, obviously that is a red flag. And there's many, many other red flags that I'm sure that drivers know that maybe I should take an extra second or two or three and really pay attention to what is happening here. So we look forward to having continuing dialogue to try to get this thing right. We think we can fix this. This is not rocket science. This is something that is fixable, we believe. And we think that this is a system that can and should work for everyone. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. We really appreciate it. And I know we have some more public comment, people who would like to testify. We'll be adding them. The clerk's going to call you all up at the same time. If you can try to summarize your testimony, but let us know your story, and we will go from there. Clerk, can you please read the titles of the next panel?
Hank Stahl, Madeline Shakumba, Diana Johnson, Zachary Lewis, Liam Dougherty, and Gerald Scott.
As you come up, the first three could sit or stay at the table, and then the rest just fill in the seats along the rail.
Thank you. Appreciate it very much.
As
Good
the others.
afternoon. My name is Diana Johnson. I am the caregiver for Donna Webb. She's my twin sister. I think I'm in Curtis Jones District. We live 3600 Conshohocken Avenue in the Winfield Overbrook section. I'm a member of Cathedral of Praise Community Church, Dr. Laverne Adams. And I first want to start off saying the good things about CCT. We had a driver named Sean. Can everybody hear me? Because back there I could not hear well. We had a driver named Sean who was exceptional. I've sent in letters of accommodation for him. However, CCT did a change of tours, and those drivers going to Alwyn Institute at 4040 Market Street, their routes were changed. So now we have a series of various drivers picking my sister up. Also, something else that has been good, the dispatchers, receptionists, customer service, their conversations to me on the telephone have always been polite. Now, on the other side, my sister has been riding CCT for about 50 years. The service up to the last 5 years has been pretty good. But for some reason, I don't know what the change has been, the service is fair to poor. Some folks have already gotten up and mentioned the lateness of the pickup time. But SEPTA is good, CCT is good for letting you know if you're more than 5 minutes late, they will leave you. But we have no recourse when they're an hour, a half an hour to an hour late. A few instances, the van was late, and I asked for the location. The dispatcher said, "We're 3 minutes away from your home." I said, where are you located?" I said, "Miss, that's going to be more than 3 minutes." It was a half hour later. One driver came to me and said, "Miss, I apologize for being late." I was so humbled by his apology, because oftentimes we don't get that. Oftentimes, if they're late, they have to hurry to get to their next stop. And I don't think it's intentional, but it was awfully nice to hear a driver say, "I'm sorry that I'm late." Sometimes it's not their fault. We might get a call that the van was in an accident, or the van broke down, or they're stuck in traffic. But for whatever reason, it was definitely nice to hear that driver say, "I apologize for being late." I mean, all my attitude just dissolved, is how you relate to other people. Her van number is 6937. Her scheduled pickup time is 3:30. And it has been mentioned several times by other people that when she's not picked up at that time, the center closes at 4:30. So I've gotten calls from Elwyn, 5 o'clock, the van has not come. All the workers have gone, the doors are locked, and they have assigned one person to stay when CCT is late. That's something that needs to be addressed when the business itself is closed. And I said to CCT, "You have it on record that the business is closed, and my sister has not been picked up yet." That's a serious issue. Hold on. One time recently, I did receive a call from the driver stating, "We are late." One time, "We are late picking up your sister." It was 4:30. I said, "Thank you." So now I know what time she's expected to be home now. The later the pickup, for those of you who live in that area, know you're in the City Line Avenue traffic, Belmont Avenue, the Winfield traffic, the later the ride. So CCT might be scheduling rides and the estimated time that it's going to get there, but the later the drop-off, the more involved the traffic is. I wrote down a lot of things because things came to me as I was listening. Just one other thing, and then I'll let somebody else speak. There's been I don't know how the tour is scheduled, but there is someone that lives directly around the corner from us, and she's on another bus tour, gets picked up on time and dropped off on time. So when the van was late picking my sister up from 4040, I said, "Can you put her on the other van? I can see the van coming right past my house." So sometimes you're wondering what is going on with the scheduling. And I know sometimes there are add-ons. I heard that mentioned. But the add-on could be like 2 hours away. And I said, an add-on that far away? So thank you. I could go on and on. There's some good things about CCT. There's some good people about CCT. But on the other hand, when it comes down to the actual pickup, drop-off, and those things that happen in between, there's much to be desired. And I think with all the intelligent minds that are sitting here, that we as a group of people can come together to figure out how we can solve this issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Please proceed. State your name first.
My
And
name
hold
is
on, hold on one second.
Thank you for also being from the 4th District, and you are my constituent, and I am your council person, and we will fix this.
Okay, thank you.
State your name for the record and then proceed.
My name is Hank Stahl, and I'm the former Outreach Coordinator and Education Specialist for CCT Connect. I am currently retired. I am a user of both the fixed route service and the CCT Connect paratransit service. I've been listening with great awareness of problems by some of our consumers who use the service. I'm also aware of a lot of the rules and regulations that go with using CCT Connect. To coin a phrase, we all have these rights. We also have responsibilities with these rights. I have been available many times when I used CCT to talk to fellow riders and hearing their problems. And on more than, I'd say, a majority of the occasions, when I asked them, have you read the guide that comes with your membership card? And unfortunately, a lot of them do not. It's not a taxi cab service. I realize that we are in a situation where we want to go from point A to point B. But in the ride guides that every customer gets when they are brought into the service, or in my case, recertified to be able to continue using the service, there are guidelines that help you decide how you should plan your ride. An example would be, for me to go from, I live at Bustleton and Grant. For me to make it on public transportation from Bustleton and Grant to 1234 Market Street, the average public transportation ride would take me a little over an hour. Under the guidelines with CCT Connect, because it's not a direct bus service, we could be on that vehicle 1.5 times that amount. I found that when customers make their reservations, they don't allow that time frame that is explicit in the guides that we receive. Well, it only takes me half hour to drive from here to there. Yes, but if you had to take the bus from here to there, including waiting time for a bus, how long would it take you? That's one of the issues. Are some of the operators late? Yes. Unequivocally, some of them are late. But again, part of that has to do with sometimes people's disabilities, or limitations, as I like to say. Someone of my ilk who uses a wheelchair, and I use mine very well, it may only take me 2 minutes to get from my front door to get on the vehicle and then be strapped down safely. Mary Jones, she may not handle her chair as well and take her twice as long or 3 times as long to get from her door just to get to the vehicle. Now, you add that time onto a GPS time of where it's supposed to go from A to B to C to D, all of a sudden now you've got operators who might be running late. And that doesn't include your traffic issues, your detours, or any other issues involved. These are issues that we all have to understand. I have a right to be on time at work, but I have a responsibility to allow myself the travel time. Certain organizations represent groups of individuals for transportation, and they may say, our center opens at 8:30 in the morning, and one individual might be responsible for getting rides for 10 or 12 people that are coming there at 8:30 in the morning. Well, obviously, we're not going to be able to pick everybody up at 7:15 to be there by 8:30. We have to allow the fact that we're going from point A to point B to point C and so forth, and also factor in the limitations of each individual who is using the system. Those who have issues walking, navigating with a walker, crutches, canes, wheelchairs, power chairs, and/or manual. Everything is different. When I worked at SEPTA, we tried to manage that as well as we could. As an education specialist, I was responsible to go to different schools and agencies and organizations to explain the full system to each group. Did I get an earful of complaints from each of those groups? Most certainly. Did I accept them? Not willingly, but I did. And I made efforts to let our people know down at 1234 what we could do to try to alleviate some of these concerns. Again, if I wanted to ride at a certain time in the morning and that's not available to me, they could offer me an alternative time, which I have the option of taking or not taking. Because the policy at SEPTA is we have 0 trip denial, which means under the law we have to give everybody a ride if they wants a ride. but if we can't give them the time they want, we can offer them an alternative time, and then it's up to the individual at that time to determine whether they want to accept that time or not. Several times I wanted to I had to be at work at 8:30 when I was with SEPTA. I figured I needed to be picked up at 7 o'clock, figuring the hour and a half extra time. Some days, a couple mornings when I try to ride, I say, we don't have a 7 o'clock available. We have a 7:45 or a 6:30. Well, 7:45 is not going to get me to work at 8:30 on time. So I have a choice. Do I miss work and not take the early 6:30 that they might offer me, or do I arrive late? Those are options that we all have to bear. It's not idyllic, but it is the best that can be done under circumstances because we have a zero-trip denial. When it comes to driver issues, there is what they call a 10-20 window. If I have a 7 o'clock request, I must be ready by 10 of, and the driver is required to pick me up between 10 of and 20 after. If he violates either of those windows, I file a complaint. And when you issue the complaint is investigated, and if it finds that the complaint is verified, it's small consolation, but a customer is offered a free ride or two, depending on the severity of the complaint and the frequency of the complaints. These are other issues that are they utopian for everybody? No, they're not, but they are considerations. If you have a complaint regarding an operator on a vehicle for, as I've heard, rudeness or lack of concern for individuals, a complaint is issued, and those operators are brought in, it's investigated, and a majority of those that are all those that are found to be legitimate, those operators are penalized to the point of either written reprimands, which escalate to personal reprimands and so forth and so on, to finally exclusion of driving for the service. Same way for customers. They were talking about drivers leaving before a customer is ready to go. If I have a 7 o'clock pickup and my driver shows up at 10 of 7, which is within the 10-20 window, I must be ready to leave by 5 of. If I'm not ready to leave, they are permitted to leave me, at which point I have to find my own transportation in some cases, or if they have the capability of sending a vehicle later to get me, they will. My mother, who utilizes paratransit for her medical trips, schedules her doctor's appointments accordingly so that she'd rather wait at the doctor for an extra period of time rather than miss her ride, because if she misses her ride and it's a return ride, we do come back for that customer, but it could be 1 hour, 2 hours later, because we can't inconvenience other customers who have their times scheduled. Same with this young lady that was just testifying about 2 vehicles, one around the corner or down the street from her, and her vehicle. Sometimes there are 2 vehicles in the same area, but it's because of request times. Maybe her daughter's request time is for 3 o'clock, but this other person's request time was for 2:30. Well, they go pick this young lady at 2:30, but they can't sit and wait for you at 3 o'clock if you're not ready. These are all issues.
Right.
We're not a perfect organization.
Yeah, I think.
Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen and ladies, and I'll be glad to answer questions whenever this young lady is finished.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Appreciate that, because I know we have several more to come up. So, same thing. If you could please summarize next with your testimony while the other ones are coming forward. State your name first and then continue.
My name is Madeline Shakumba. I'm a CCT rider. I'm ambulatory. So there's different buses. I don't know what he's talking about because he's in a wheelchair. But the buses that come pick me up are not picking up wheelchair people, generally. They're picking up people like me, capable of walking and getting on and off the bus. I don't have the same experience he has. Yes, there are some promising things about SEPTA, but there are some things that are not. Okay? And yes, they can be praised for providing a service in which we desperately need. And that's the good thing about it. But they have to get their act together. Okay? One is that I only take it one way. I don't let them take me home. I just get on the bus and go home myself.
but they do bring me to the senior center in the morning. They're 75% late and 25% on time. All right, and when they're late, they're late. You call them on the phone, and they said, oh, the driver's on his way. 25 minutes later, the driver's still on his way. Today, I was late getting to where I had to go. And when I called them on the phone, they said, well, he's supposed to be there from 10:30 to 10:50, I think it was. I said, miss, that's not what the telephone thing you told me. He's supposed to have been there from 10:20 to 10:40. Now you telling me 10:30. Which one is it? What you telling me or what I got over the phone when I confirmed the fact I was going to be riding the bus? Different times for different folks, it looked like. Another thing is that when you're ready to go somewhere, one time I took it to go shopping, they were late. I booked it from 2 o'clock to go for 4 o'clock. My man showed up at 3. Then when I got where I wanted to go shopping, I called him before I left. Oh, he has to come pick you up in time, 4 o'clock. So, but I ain't got time to shop. Although he was late picking me up, the fellow who's ready to pick me up in my house, the fellow who's ready to pick me up in the shopping place, oh, he got there on time. Which meant I had to cut short my shopping, and they make no leeway for that. Second thing is, I hope that you can reduce the price, because a lot of us, the price going one way is $4. Okay, $4 one way. That's pretty high for people on fixed income. Okay, if you can reduce the price, it would be greatly appreciated, because that's $8 round trip. Second thing is that, let me see. The add-ons. One time, because mine is fixed, so they're supposed to pick me up every single Monday. I called one time, oh, you're an add-on. I said, add-on? What do you mean an add-on? I'm supposed to be a regular pickup. Well, we had to add your voice on. We didn't have you down for pickup. I mean, all these things that screwy up things that happen. Okay? SEPTA has got to get their act together. And yes, they do apparently, farm out the things to different agencies. But it's the dispatcher that I find to be the problem. Like the people have told you, there's 5 people picked up in my area. And most of them are picked up around the same time I'm picked up. They were late picking me up. And then I decided not to wait because it was too late. And I teach a class at the senior center. So I get out and I'm walking to catch the bus because I get tired. I can get there faster that way. And what do I see? SEPTA van. I said, you here to pick me up? No, we're not here to pick you up. We're here to pick the lady who lived around the corner from me. Right around the corner from me. There to pick her up. Mine never showed up. I had to get there by bus. And I said, what's going on here? How come you picking her up and she just lives around the corner from me and you can't pick me up? Well, you're not on the list. So these are some of the screwy things that go on with SEPTA and the CCT that I wish to complain about. And I hope that they can get their act together. It's a service that is needed, but still, even though it's a needed service, you should provide good service. I mean, they seem to have a, monopoly. And once you have a monopoly, you don't give the service that's required. You got all kinds of excuses. And the second thing is that, yes, they do have people who may miss their trip. But let's not be like Trump. Give me one example of somebody who had to wait for 6 hours. Like he did one person who voted multiple times as a means of massive voter fraud. Please, don't give me this one person as a means of massive misuse by us. Okay. I would appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Councilwoman Bass, before we continue with more testimony.
Yeah, we don't use alternative facts here.
Huh?
We don't use alternative facts here.
Oh, I'm glad about that.
Councilwoman Bass?
I just wanted to say a couple things. One, I wanted to acknowledge Captain Estelle and thank him for all of his hard work with the SEPTA Police Department. They do a fantastic job in keeping all of us safe as riders. So we just wanted to acknowledge his presence as well. But also, just hearing the comments and the similar tones to them makes me think that we probably need to bring together the advocacy community and SEPTA sooner rather than later. So we're going to put folks together in a room to try to resolve these issues before budget hearings, which starts in March. So we would like to start way before then. So hopefully by the time you come to us for budget hearings, we'll have it all resolved and worked out. That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Just please state your name for the record and then begin with your testimony.
Hello, my name is Zachary Lewis. Thank you guys for having me here today. There was a couple of things that I wanted to mention. In addition to testimony that's already been submitted to you guys, in the beginning, City Council asked, how could you guys help? You were talking as far as CCT, and as far as the public. And with CCT is one issue, but, I wanted to bring this up because, it's not just a CCT issue that we're dealing with, because a lot of people that have taken CCT have been kicked off of CCT. So it's not, for me, what I'm bringing up is not so much just a CCT issue, but a SEPTA issue. So the couple of things I came up with were enforcement. Enforcement is so important when it comes to the laws and the policies and procedures that SEPTA has. When it comes to the vehicles at fixed bus routes and snow at fixed bus routes. What I mean is when a person with a disability is waiting for a fixed bus route, there's no access to board the bus. And again, enforcement is a big issue. There could be vehicles that are in the bus zone, or because of the snow. Thank God we haven't had much to deal with, but it's going to always be an issue when those plows, come through the streets and the buses, those plows are, the snow is either pushed at the SEPTA stop or, just along where the cars are parked, or at, piled up at corners, intersections. I'm a person with a disability. Once that is cut off for me, there's no way, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm just, SOL, and I don't, what am I supposed to do about that? So enforcement when it comes to, and we've talked to SEPTA about this, we've met across the table, which is great, and let them know, hey, this is an issue for us. What can we do about it? How do we work together to enforce this? By the way, I'm sorry, I'm with Disabled in Action. So, we've come and met across the table and asked, and we're asking you guys as well as far as enforcement, how can you guys help us with this? It's a very important issue. Let's see. With snow and architectural barriers, having access is it's an enormous issue. Like I just mentioned, those two examples as far as the snow and cars being in the bus loading zones for people to, get on the bus. When a person with a disability is waiting for a fixed bus route, the vehicles continuously are in the pickup zone. When cars do this, it disrupts the whole way we get picked up, if we even can. This becomes an enormous safety issue, and then, it becomes an issue with the bus drivers as far as attitude. How, they'll say, well, I don't know what I can do for you. If there's a lot of snow on the ground and there's a steep incline and there's already snow there that's stopping me from, being able to, gain access to the buses, I don't know what I can do for you. Well, you could offer to help. Or there has to be an option other than just throw your hands up. That is so unacceptable. So, and like we said, we've met it across the table with SEPTA about these issues, and we're asking you guys as well. Also, this is the big one. When the city is hosting an event, whatever event, even with Trump being here, there's always barriers. There's architectural barriers that are stopping people with disabilities for gaining access to the bus. There might as well be snow right there as well, because once those those barriers are linked, there's no way, with my superior strength that I could undo those. So it's what do we do about that? And in a timely manner, because once they're there, it's well, how am I supposed to get access on the bus? Market Street, when those barriers are put up, it was maybe 6 blocks, 4 to 6 blocks, that there was no way that I was able to get on the bus unless I started at the beginning of the birth of the bus. That's unacceptable. If I'm in a manual wheelchair or whomever, a person with a disability, period, that's going to be a big issue. So we asked, SEPTA, and we asked City Council, what can you guys do to help us out with that? Also, there was an issue that we had before. Once we actually boarded the bus, or the attitude of the bus driver, again, we would say, once someone's already on the bus and there's the first 3 to 4 seats on each side of, between 4 and 5 seats on each side of the passenger side and the driver's side of the bus, there are people already sitting there. And those seats say, in yellow, reserved for a person, senior citizens, or I believe a person with disability. We were told that, hey, we can't make them get up. There's no, where's the law that says that? Are you serious? The fact that you were able to sit there, whether you're young, old, or not, the fact that you were able to sit there means you have access to the bus. I'm in a wheelchair getting on the bus, and there's no way I can get on the bus. There's no way I can be properly seated if you do not get up and move a couple seats back. The attitude of the bus drivers determines a lot as far as how's that ride going to go. And like I said, enforcement. Is there ways that, what ways can you think of or help us out so, help enforce the issue with these drivers that, hey, we're not second-class citizens. We want to get on and just ride just like everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. State your name and then proceed with your testimony.
Hi, I'm Liam Nakrity. I work full-time in Liberty Resources. I'm with ADAPT and board member of DIA. And I don't use CCT right now, but I have a progressive disability, and I will. And I'm scared. I was scared before today, and this day is only compounded that I'm really scared. It's obvious that this service is inadequate, and I think it was stated before, that SEPTA and CZT is dealing with the, scarcity, financial scarcity, and I get that. But the fact is, this is an outdated system. It has to be changed. Something has to be changed. When I'm leaving Liberty, if I need to stay later, 5 or 6 for some job, when I leave, I work with a lot of disabled people, and there's always 2 or 3 people waiting on CCD there every day that I'm late. And I can't live like that. I can't imagine what that's like. And I need to get home. As things are. From what Zach said, the SEPTA conditions as they are on buses, and I can't access the trolley that I would use for my commute. Dealing with elevators and curb cutouts and everything like that. I don't know. I could go on, but something has to change.
Thank you, and thank you for your courage to testify. We appreciate it. I believe this is our last person to testify. Just state your name and then continue with your testimony.
Okay. My name is Gerald Scott, and I am a disabled individual. I call myself challenged ability. And I can echo everything that everyone has said. I was born with cerebral palsy. So I'm 65 years old. I'm a senior, birth defect, and so I've experienced it all, from not being able to get on anything until now we can get on the buses. In terms of CCT, I have used them in the past. I can testify, as others have, that the time aspect of it is sometimes ridiculous, coming and going. In fact, I had a meeting at my home, I guess about a month ago, and one of the persons that came to the meeting was supposed to be picked up at 3 o'clock after the meeting was over. And they didn't get home, the bus didn't even come till after 9. We called there. Well, someone called, but nobody answered. They're on their way. Well, she has to be put on a as needed basis, or whenever's available basis. So we waited. Ultimately, they came. But certainly there has to be a change. There has to be a sensitivity as to the needs of those who are physically challenged. There has to be a sensitivity. I know many a time when I try to get on CCT, to go to the doctor, to go to the church, things that are time essence events that have to be there on time. And I'm getting there half hour, 45 minutes late. And I'm a preacher, so many times I'm on preaching engagements. I pastored in the AME church for over 25 years right here in this city. And getting in places late. I don't like to be late when I don't have to be. And I understand what the gentleman said. Sometimes you have to get advanced appointments to accommodate that. But when the church is not open until 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock, and I'm sitting out there in the middle of the street, and I listen to that now, we're in the wintertime, it's 30 degrees, going on 29. I've been in that kind of situation, even with the regular SEPTA bus, standing, seeing buses go by me. The bus driver don't want to pick me up. They choose not to. So they go on by, tell me, wait, there's somebody behind. One day recently, I had to wait for 4 buses. I followed one of them because there were so many buses and cars in front of that particular bus. I caught up with the bus. In my old jalopy here. And I caught up with the bus. There was a light. I banged on the door. I said, let me in. Almost sound like the wolf and the 3 little pigs. Bang, 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 let me in. And she finally let me in, got on the bus. She wouldn't tie me down because the bus straps were not working. So she said, why don't you wait again? I said, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right on this bus. I'll hold out until my change comes. But I'm not getting off this bus. But this is the kind of inconvenience, of all the groups in this country. We make up the majority. We have more people that are disabled than any other minority group in this country and in the world. There are 60 million people with disabilities in the United States, 1 billion people around the world. And yet we're the most misrepresented, ignored, marginalized group of any group. And that's the truth of the matter. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Congresswoman, and all the rest that are here today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your testimony, and I could tell by your voice that you didn't even need a microphone,
No,
so that was good. Everybody could hear you.
Thank you.
But thank you very much for your testimony. Is there anyone else here to testify? Seeing none, this committee shall stand at a recess to call the chair. Thank you so much.